Hello to all of you. Well, I just want to confirm you should be able to see the screen and hopefully you can hear me clearly. If someone could be so kind on the chat group just to let me know and make sure that you can see the screen and that we can rock and roll. So I'm quite excited tonight. The last couple of weeks we've been sort of getting into the nitty gritty and, the numbers and where we're at and the tech. But tonight I'm going to invite you on a journey. Tonight we're going to get into a future vision, and we're going to basically go way into the future, sort of at least 5 years into the future. And we're going to sort of see where we want to be in terms of where the world is going. Now, no one has a crystal ball, but one of the most important things when one's building a business is that if you build a business for today, there's a very good chance you won't be in business tomorrow. And so one needs to find a balance between making money today and building the solution for tomorrow. And the purpose of this webinar is to take you on a journey and to show you the major trends in terms of where we're at. Now, one of the things that I will say is I'm not quite sure how long this is going to take. I put a huge amount of time into this webinar. I basically was up at 1 a.m. this morning, and I spent the best part of 5 hours putting this all together because I've got numerous different angles and slides and everything else over the many years that I wanted to bring together and to put it all into one place. And also what I think is quite important is that when one considers where we're going, that you get some context into why we're going there and how it all fits together. And so that's the purpose of this webinar. Ask lots of questions, engage with me. If you're feeling tired because it's the end of the year and you've had a tough year, that's fine. However, I plan to bring my absolute maximum energy to the table. And really, for me, it's quite exciting. I quite enjoy these webinars because I've spent 20 years passionately at the intersection of technology and property. And for me, tonight is the antithesis of sharing some of those trends and where we see the world going. And so let me just check the dashboards quickly. I just want to see, I don't see any questions. Can you please confirm? Can someone just tell me, can you see me, hear me, see the screen? I will put the questions up there. Okay, thank you, Shane, for letting me know. Okay, fantastic. So let's rock and roll. The first thing when it comes to any good story is the why. And I'm not going to repeat the story. You've all heard, I presume, the story of my father. He basically passed away on the 1st of August, 2005. And unfortunately for him, he did what everyone, including probably yourselves, has been taught to do, which was to work hard, go to school, go to university. He was effectively financial director of Rainbow Chickens, which is a listed company. He really trusted the financial industry. He invested, he paid his taxes, and yet he died broke. And unfortunately, 94% of people will follow my father. They'll either be dead, broke, or reliant on the government. 5% of people will retire trapped, and only 1% of people will retire wealthy. And so this is a picture of me and my dad when I was 13 years old on my first property project. And I decided at a very young age, there must be a better way. For those of you that recognize this, it's a Commodore 64. The program is Logo. And in the early 80s, I think it was 1983, my parents, I was 6 years old, my parents took me along to school for extra classes, and I just loved technology. I also loved Monopoly, and still to this day love playing Monopoly, and wanted to, compete with anyone that wanted to play me. And as a child, always wanted to try and figure out, how can we use technology in the property space? And then also growing up in Africa, something that you become very, very aware of is the wealth gap and income inequality and the difference between the haves and the have-nots. And so this slide shapes my personal experience, and it really is the why that drives me personally and ultimately the Global Wealth Group and everything that we do in terms of what we're looking to achieve. Now, I get asked sometimes, people have said to me, Scott, you seem to jump on the next fad, whether it's crowdfunding or blockchain or cryptocurrencies. And where people are missing it is that I like to play at the intersection of technology and property. So whenever technology is changing, whenever trends are changing, and they will continue to change, I like to stay abreast with what's happening. But what I'm I don't get caught up in the next fad. I get caught up in how technology can be used to literally transform the property industry. I did my dissertation in it in 1998, 20 years ago. Can you believe it? And 20 years ago, the property and construction industry couldn't spell the word IT. And in 2001, I did my master's in London on the same topic. And so that's the why. Now, I want to just get going with a little video. And I need to just figure out how to do this, because I think it's quite a nice introduction to, now, where do I find it? Sorry, give me 2 seconds. I am looking for, where are my videos? Audio, webcam. Give me 2 seconds. I'm just looking for where my videos are going. That's absolutely bizarre. I thought I could just play the video through the platform. One last time, let me see where I'm looking. Why is it not showing up? Attendees, what am I doing wrong? Sharing. Oh, here I found it. So this will be loading up now quickly, and this is a video which I think is quite an exciting intro into this webinar. You can just confirm if you could see the video, because I've got a couple more to share, and I just want to make sure that you can see the videos there. So just let me know if you could see that video. So anyway, that's a video that we made, and it's a 60-second clip just explaining sort of where we're at and where we're going. And if anyone else could just let me know. Okay, so Francis says they can see it. Okay, great. So I'm sorry, Winston, but everyone else seemed to be able to see it. So let's rock and roll into our journey. Now, some of you have heard this before, some of you haven't. I'm going to play some games tonight to keep you, engaged. And the first one is, who's Ronald Wayne? Can anyone tell me? Who is Ronald Wayne? So if you thought you were coming online for a webinar and just going to play on Facebook, then I'm going to have to keep you engaged. But so there are, Shane's got it. Shane was there this weekend, so he's right. It's the first Apple, the first investor in Apple. He was actually the third shareholder in Apple. And when he sold in 12 weeks after investing in Apple or starting in Apple, he sold for $2,300, and he owned 10% of Apple. And today it's worth $70 billion, and probably a little bit more considering how well Apple's done in the last couple of months. So what's the moral of the story? Well, sometimes a crazy fool comes along, and that crazy fool says that they can change the world, and people don't take them seriously. And I'm sure that Ronald Wayne wishes he could go back on his original decision. So just be careful. Sometimes you get good information, and it's important to take that information to heart. We live in an interesting time. When you look at Delta Airlines, it was started in 1924. It's the biggest in the world. It's the oldest operational airline in the world. It's in 334 cities and 64 countries. It's got 80,000 employees, and it's worth $37.9 billion, of which $19 billion is aeroplanes. You compare that with Uber, which is the biggest transport company in the world. It was started in 2009. It's in 82 countries and 785 cities. It's got 12,000 employees, and it's worth somewhere between $50 and $68 billion. Then you compare that with Marriott. It started in 1927. It's got 200,000 employees. It's got 487 properties. It's in 80 countries. It's got 697,000 rooms, bed nights. It's worth $18.5 billion. And it was also the first company to allow people to book online in 1995. And you compare that with Airbnb, which started in 2008. It's got 3,100 employees. It's in 81,000 cities and 191 countries. It's got 5 million listings. Just to repeat, Airbnb was 697,000. Airbnb now has 5 million listings, and it's worth $31 billion. So we live in pretty interesting times. And if I go through, I didn't actually open this up, my bad, but I'll open it up for you quickly. If we go through here, actually, it's probably easier for me just to search. Wall Street Journal. So this is a really interesting graphic that I found a while ago, and it basically talks about the tech companies and the value that's been created in tech companies over the last couple of years. So let's just look at this little infographic here, back to 2014, and I'm going to play this live for you, and hopefully you'll be able to see what happens. So there it is, and just in my interest, if you look here, if I hover over this, it normally pops up. Now there it is. So Uber is 72 billion. Oh, I was wrong. It's gone up. And Didi, which is basically the Uber of China, is 56 billion. So the two most valuable companies are actually both effectively taxi companies. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. And if we look here, if we look at all the tech companies, and we look at all the brands that we understand, Amazon, Uber, Alibaba, Facebook, Airbnb, Google, etc., there's three things that they do when they disrupt a market. They cut out the middleman, they dramatically cut the costs, and they increase the trust, the transparency, and the accessibility. So let me repeat that. They cut the costs, they cut out the middleman, and they dramatically increase the trust, the transparency, and the accessibility. Now look at any one of these brands, and you'll see what I mean. So take Airbnb as an example. It's cut out the middleman, it's dramatically cut the costs, and it's dramatically increased the trust, the transparency, and the accessibility of people being able to stay around the world. Now, when you look at this slide, and you sort of got Uber as the largest taxi company, it owns no vehicles. Facebook's the world's most popular media owner, creates no content. Alibaba, the most valuable retailer, has no inventory. And Airbnb, the world's largest accommodation provider, owns no real estate. I always ask people, what is it that is the common denominator between them? You can just type it up. And Francis, I think you need to check your settings. I'm looking at my screen here, and I can see what you guys can see, and it looks like my slides are fully sharing, so I'm not sure if it's on your side. So we've got technology company, the web and mobile. Anything else? In simple terms, they're data companies. And what's also fascinating is that I learned this about 6 to 8 months ago. And someone said, if you ever want to find where there's going to be money to be made in the next disruption, the next industry to be disrupted, there's only two things you need to look for. The first one is you need to look for where there's a terrible customer experience. And secondly, you need to look for where it's really expensive. And so if you take Uber as an example, catching a taxi was really not a pleasant experience all over the world, and it was expensive. And come along Uber, and it basically smashes the market up. So when one looks at that perspective, it gets really interesting for me. And okay, so it's showing. Okay, I see what you mean. It's showing both slides. Thank you for letting me know. Swap displays. Ah, thank you, Francis. You are a star. Sorry, I didn't realize that. Okay. So what's really interesting is when one takes into account the technology industry and what it's going to do to the property industry. Well, when one looks at the property industry, if we take those two variables that I just spoke of, can we agree that the property industry has a very bad experience and that's really expensive? I mean, anyone that's bought a house will know how difficult it is to buy a house, or sell a house for that matter, or even own a house. And equally, it's very expensive. And so this industry is ripe for disruption. And this 13.6 trillion that I've got here, this is just the commercial industry. When you take the residential industry into account, it's a $217 trillion industry. And so tonight's webinar is about the $217 trillion opportunity as technology is going to disrupt the property or real estate industry. Now, we're going to look at trends all night. And the first one is it's been written up as a Harvard business study, and they've also written a book on it now called New Power. I'd highly recommend that you go and get this book. Richard Branson said it was his best book of 2018. So I highly recommend that you read it because it's very, very important to understand where the world is going. And what they basically talk about is you've got a new power business model and you've got an old power business model. And you've got old power values and you've got new power values. And then companies get put into different areas. Now, to keep this simple, as I simplified this a little bit further. So if you look here, you've got the old power model, the new power model, you've got old power values and new power values. And I believe that on the left-hand side, the return goes up over there. Along the top, global and purposeful goes from left to right. Exponential goes from top to bottom. And risk, short-term risk, goes from left to right. So let's look at some examples. Well, if we look at Encyclopedia Britannica, it would definitely be in the bottom left corner because it's all about old power. It's an old power model. It's top-down control, and it's old power values. And then you compare it to Wikipedia that has 19 million people around the world that actually verify the information, and it's the 8th most visited website in the world. What about the Marriott? We just spoke about them. We've got Marriott Hotels and Airbnb. You've got any sort of bookstore, call it Barnes & Noble, and you've got Amazon, which is $1 trillion company. And what they've achieved to retail in the last 20 years is phenomenal. And then you've got sort of any property company, whether it's a property company, a fund, a REIT, anything. And they're all in the bottom left corner, old power model with old power values. And in the top right, you've got Wealth Migrate because it's a new power model with new power values. And what I think is very important here is that you can see short-term risk goes from left to right. But if you take a 5-year view or longer, I believe long-term risk goes from right to left. And it's really important to understand this. So now let's look at some key trends that are happening within the new power model. The first one is social proofing. Now, I went on eBay back in 2003 and I bought tickets to the Rugby World Cup. I love rugby. And I basically got scammed out of £11,000 buying tickets for the Rugby World Cup on eBay. And I learned pretty quickly about what social proofing is. And in simple terms, social proofing, if you want to go and buy tickets, is this little thing down the bottom here. So you can see I'm pointing to it and I've enlarged it. Now, I've never met this guy or woman, 7104 Leslie, but they've done 974 transactions and they got 100% positive feedback. Now, I know that I can trust this person probably more than I can trust my brother to deliver, because there's absolutely no ways that they would want to impact their digital reputation. Their livelihood depends on it. So when one goes into a lot more detail, you can go in and you can see all the different ratings, in terms of this is retail now, between items as described, communication, shipping time, etc. You've got positive, neutral, negative. You can see all the different details, recent feedback, and then you can see the feedback down the bottom. Then, generally you've got these, what they call tombstones, and you can see all the different feedback, and you can quite quickly see who you can trust online. It's called social proofing. And then you bring that forward, and then you look at somewhere like Alibaba, and they've taken it to another level, and it's called a reputation management system. And so what's fascinating for me with the reputation management system is that you can see that they've been in business for 1 year. You can see where they're in business. They've, whereabouts they are, the amount of transactions they've done, the different assessments. So this is where external parties go in and assess and make sure that they're verifiable. They've got, they've done 3 transactions. And you compare this to, again, like eBay, where you've got the top rated sellers, et cetera, and all the details in terms of the reputation management system. And so the question I ask is that when you take a screen like that and it comes to property, why could you not have the same sort of thing? Why could you not have the years in business, the number of projects to date on and off platform, the niche focus, the amount of money that they're investing in the project, the risk they're assuming on the project, the responsiveness to communication, the timing of dividends, the accuracy of returns promised to returns received. If they promise a 6% return and they give you a 7% return, well, that's wonderful, and they should be recognized for that. And if they give you a 5% return, they should equally get recognized for that. And people should know that their returns are not accurate long term. And then ultimately, you could get ranking from the investors, but with algorithms taking into account the understanding and sophistication of investors, so that those rankings would be really meaningful. Then you take that forward, and you've got recognition systems. So there's 10 different recognition systems that we've built out in spec effectively. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I wanted to use the due diligence one. And I've already mentioned Wikipedia. So what's fascinating to me is that I don't believe that there's a scalable model where you're going to build an investment committee and have a couple of gray-haired people sitting in a room in one location where they're going to try and make investment decisions in other countries, in other markets. It's not scalable, and it's not the future. It's like trying to tie more horses together to make your ox wagon go faster. And where the world is going is that there's going to be community due diligence. Now, notice that I use the word community due diligence versus crowd due diligence. What's the difference? Well, community due diligence is exactly the same as Wikipedia. So when Wikipedia was started, all the big professors and all the universities said, it's a ridiculous idea, it will never work, and it's going to belittle the quality of the information, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I've said it already. There's 19 million accredited people that can submit to Wikipedia. They sense and verify everything, and it's the most accurate source of information on the planet, and it's the 8th most visited website in the world. Now, you might be sitting there and thinking, Scott has gone absolutely dilly, and you cannot equate Wikipedia to a due diligence. And I'm willing to take any bet that anyone wants to take with me, that in the next certainly 10 years, this is the way it will be done. Because real estate and property is always local. There will always be local expertise. There are always people that understand what's going on in the market, and they will be able to give very accurate information. And then, different experts with big data and algorithms and everything else will be able to make far more intelligent decisions than investment committees. And so, mark my words, it might not happen in the next 6 months, but it'll definitely be happening in the next 5 to 10 years. And then, with regards to the participants and participating, what's really important, and again, this is in our beta versions, where we basically want to create investment circles. So where people can invite their friends, they can invest with their friends. We help facilitate that. You can see your investment circle. You win a whole bunch of badges based on what you're doing and how you're doing it. You can join different investment circles. And again, if you want to look at real life example, go to angel.co, where they've already got investment circles, and key people like Tim Ferriss can come in and people can follow them, and Tim can invest in deals. I see the exact same thing where someone like Dolph DeRuss will run an investment circle and people can participate in his investment circle. Maybe Henny will run an investment circle, but certainly people all over the world will run investment circles. You and I will run an investment circle. We compete with our friends, our family, and our work colleagues. And then what's interesting is that through the investment circle, you'll earn badges, you'll get involved into challenges, and then people will be able to see all the different network circles, how they're interacting with people, how they're doing. It's all about using nature's laws. A bird flying in a flock can fly 70% further than a bird flying on its own. And again, think of it like Facebook and the engagement around Facebook within your investment groups. Then the next thing is around the participation premium. So a lot of people, understand this already, but there's a massive company around the world called IKEA. Now, IKEA, I lived in London for 9 years, so I know exactly what IKEA is, because it's a cheap way to buy furniture. And you would go to IKEA and you'd buy these flat packs and you'd have to take them home and then build the furniture. And there's been studies done that have proved that people value the stuff they build much more than when others build it. And so often when people build IKEA furniture, they think it's really, really, valuable compared to when someone else builds it. There's also plenty of examples in that when people are, building handcrafts and everything else. And so the future is about co-creation and participation. And the old power behaviors is pretty much complying and being told what to do and then just consuming, investing or whatever. But the new power behaviors are sharing, affiliating, adapting, being part of the whole due diligence that I just spoke about with community feedback, funding, what we're talking about with Seeders at the moment, where you can literally become a shareholder in the platform, producing. This is where you actually become a property partner and you're actually producing assets, and then finally shaping. And, the people that run Wikipedia and shape the future of where Wikipedia is going and how it's going there. And so I wanted to point to this guy, Peter Diamandis, and he's had a big influence on a lot of people's lives. There's this book, which I would highly recommend, which is called Bold. Hopefully you can see it. I'd highly, highly recommend reading this if you want to get an insight into where the world is going. And he basically said the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities. Now, what's fascinating is that I went to Singularity University, which is in San Francisco. It's run on the NASA premises and it's sponsored by Google and Tesla, etc. And they ask a question: how will you positively impact 1 billion people in the next decade? So this is the way they operate, and you can see all the different areas that they like to operate in. And a lot of people think that we're just sort of copycats and that the 1 billion people we want to impact comes from that. It's actually not. Back in 2012, 2013, we were doing the research for my book. And when we did the research, the number of people that have property on the planet equates to about 1 billion people. It's 12.9% of the world's population. And we sat back then and we said, why don't we double the world's wealth in terms of property? And so our intention then was to double it, which effectively is 1 billion people. But it's why I resonated so much with Peter Diamandis, because we were already talking about impacting 1 billion people before I'd heard about him. And he always gets people excited on how they can impact 1 billion people. And how they're doing it? Well, it's through exponentials. And I can share these slides with you. These are the type of slides you get when you go to Singularity University, where they take an entire morning's lecture and they put it together in little what do you call these, cartoons or infographics. I want to just point out a couple of things. The first one is that you need to ask better questions. And so if you're here and you think I've lost the plot, that's fine, but make sure that you're asking better questions. We've spoken a lot about Moore's law. We've spoken about digitization. We're talking about exponential disruption, and we're also talking about impact. And then over here, you can look, how do we as leaders imagine and create an abundant future? And so that's a great question that we're going to lead tonight with, in terms of how can we create an abundant future? Well, there's a framework that he talks about called the 6 Ds, and it's basically how industries get disrupted by technology. The first is that they get digitized. Then they go into stage 2, which is where it's deceptive. So basically people don't really recognize the growth. Now, a good example of this was when Jeff Bezos in 1994 realized that the internet was growing by more than 2,000% per year. And he basically was an investment banker in New York. He resigned and he started Amazon because it was deceptive. In 1994, people didn't realize what was happening with regards to the internet. But when it's doubling upon itself, it then goes to the third stage, which is where it gets disruptive and it starts to impact industries like Uber's done to the taxi industry. And then it's got three final phases where it dematerializes, demonetizes, and democratizes. So if you take any mobile phone, you know, what used to only be available to a certain few, a camera, a GPS, voice recorder, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You used to have to pay for all these things. And now on your cell phone, they're effectively dematerialized, demonetized, and democratized because they're basically free. So these are the 6 Ds. And when one looks at how the real estate industry is being disrupted, it's already started to be digitized, but it's very much in the deceptive phase. The old guard doesn't care. They're not taking any notice of it. The numbers are very small. But what's interesting is that they're doubling, and they're doubling regularly. And when you see doubling upon doubling, that is where opportunity lies. And so it hasn't disrupted the market yet, and it probably will take a couple of years to disrupt the market, but the deceptive stage is very much alive and well. So now let's look at someone I met at Singularity, and this was the biggest lesson I took away from Singularity University when I met Ray Kurzweil. Now, Ray Kurzweil is a futurist, and he's been the most accurate futurist over the last 30 years. His prediction rating for technology in the year that it would come about is 86%. He wrote the book Singularity, which is world famous. Go and look it up. And he says here, Ray Kurzweil says, we're just a few scientific breakthroughs away from eternal life. He talks a lot about 2030 and then being able to cure the likes of cancer and everything else by 2030. I put up some other quotes from him. He says a successful person isn't necessarily better than her less successful peers at solving problems. Her pattern recognition facilities have just learned what problems are worth solving. It's a very good lesson in that. So what problems are worth solving? Are they big enough? Are they real problems for people? And then he says, I'm an inventor. I became interested in long-term trends because an invention has to make sense in the world which it is finished, not the world in which it started. So what's the purpose for tonight? Well, we're looking into the future. I invited you on a journey. And the biggest lesson I learned at Singularity University, I learned from this man, Ray Kurzweil, which is where he spoke about the way to predict the future is to look for long-term trends that are intersecting. He spoke a lot about the story of Siri. So, you know, if I go on my phone here and I basically go, how do I do it now? No, it's not working. Hey, Siri. There we are. Hey, Siri. Siri, can you find Google?
What do you want to search for?
I would like to search for Ray Kurzweil.
Okay, I found this on the web for I would like to search for a Cosmo. Take a look.
So the guys that built Siri looked at long-term trends and they said, we're going to have voice recognition, we're going to have artificial intelligence, and we're going to have mobile adoption. And they built Siri, and less than 2 years later, it was bought by Apple for something like $350 or $400 million. Now, for me, it's a great example of looking at future trends. And so let's take a look at some future trends that I think are important. Let's look at 8 technology trends. So this is our white paper, and this came out in March, April, May of this year. And it was really quite a sophisticated document we put together on where we see the world going. And I wrote in this with the team a lot about the different trends. But let me highlight the important ones. The first one is blockchain. And I'm going to talk more. I'm just giving you the 8 as a synopsis, and then I'll go into more detail. But blockchain ultimately solves trust. We've got e-commerce and we've got social media. The two have come together. It's formed social commerce, and blockchain forms the foundation for trust. We've got artificial intelligence, and that's connecting us to the world's intelligence. We've got big data, algorithms, and quantum computing. And this is helping people make smart investments. We've got VR, which is virtual reality, and AR, which is augmented reality. And ultimately, people can start to experience the reality without even having to be there. We've got O2O, which is a newer concept, which is where we're connecting the online world with the offline world and giving people access to the best around the world. We've got mobile phone adoption, which is connecting the global economy. We've got 3D printing, which is dramatically reducing the costs of manufacturing and even logistics. And then we've got the digital layer, which is all about IoT and bringing it all together. So let's take a look at these in a little bit more detail. Well, when you look at blockchain, people say to us, well, why did you build on blockchain? And when I first heard about blockchain back in 2014, 2015, it just was such an eye-opener to me. Our greatest challenge that we've got when we help people invest is trust. It's the number one challenge we've got. And as blockchain is the foundation of trust and it's effectively distributed trust, I believe that could solve our greatest challenge, which was trust. And so that's why we've got a 6-phase process on blockchain, and we built our transaction, which is phase 1, on the blockchain. As a matter of interest, long term, the blockchain also solves our problem, and our vision is to empower, the 99% to invest like the top 1%, and ultimately to get it down to as simple as a swipe of a finger from $1. And that cannot happen in the fiat world, but it can certainly happen in the digital world. Now, let me share with you quickly a video about blockchain. Now, this is the best video on blockchain that I've ever found. It's a short 2-minute clip, and as soon as I get it live here, I will share it with you. What is it doing? Here it comes. So anyway, this little 2-minute clip, in my opinion, is the best one I've found to explain blockchain. Enjoy.
This is the seller. This is the buyer. This is the middleman. Cutting out the middleman can be a great thing, unless you're the middleman. And there are a lot of middlemen or intermediaries out there. Entire industries, such as payments or securities clearing, have evolved to rely on them. Why? Because they establish trust where there is none. They establish ownership, that the seller has the right to sell what's being sold. They attest to history, that there is a clean transaction history. And they certify ability, that the buyer has the money to buy it. All pretty critical details when you don't know the person on the other side of the transaction. Intermediaries know and trust one another. Their business is based on it, so they have more to lose than gain from breaching that trust. But what if there were a better, cheaper middleman? One that didn't add as much cost, complexity, and chance for error? There might be. It's called blockchain, and it has the potential to disrupt the entire ecology of intermediaries. It's a distributed ledger that relies on large networks of computers that redundantly encode transaction data by solving complex mathematical equations. The secure ledger provides an inviolable record. If the history of an instrument is incorruptible and available to all parties, there's no need for a third party to vouch. Blockchain is proof of ownership, history, and ability in non-centralized encrypted form. It's fast, transparent, and free of error. The question is not whether blockchains can cut out the middlemen in complex transactions, but rather which middlemen and when.
What do you think? I've always liked that video. I think it's pretty clean and simple. So, do you think there's any middlemen in property, or any of you middlemen? And not just in property, but in any business. Because I highly recommend that you look into blockchain. There's many reports that say that blockchain is going to have a bigger impact on your life over the next 20 years than the internet has over the last 20 years. Now, that's a big statement. Let's go back and look at how the internet has impacted your life over the last 20 years and just extrapolate that forward for the next 20 years. So let's look at a couple of things here within the blockchain. Because what people get confused by is that when they buy something on Apple, they don't say to their mates, hey, I bought something on the internet. They say, I bought something through Apple. And it's the same thing with blockchain. Blockchain is just the underlying layer in terms of where it is. But the industries that are looking to be disrupted, well, they're the ones with, what did I say? Bad customer experience and expensive transaction costs. Well, banking is quite clearly probably the worst customer experience in the world. I don't think I've ever met anyone that likes their bank. And certainly the real estate industry is number 2. And so Inc. Magazine basically believes that these 2 industries are the ones that are most ripe for disruption when it comes to blockchain. Then came along last year, specifically the age of ICOs, which stand for independent coin offerings. No, wait, initial coin offerings. You can see I've been up since 1 a.m. And they literally tracked the Gartner hype cycle. They went hugely up. And this year there's been a correction. And you can actually see why, because let's look at this little graph here. And these are ICOs back as far back as 2014. You can see in the top left corner, it's the amount of money raised through an ICO. And effectively, it's like doing an IPO, but using cryptocurrencies and using the blockchain. So you can see there that 36 million by the beginning of 2015. You can see that 2015 was quite a slow year. If you've heard of Ethereum or Ether, it was launched in 2014, and you can see not a lot was done in 2015. Bitcoin was actually very low in 2015. You can see in 2016 starts to get a lot more activity. And by the time you get to 2017, you can start to see why the regulator started getting quite excited. And that only goes to the end of 2017. Although I can safely say that in 2018, it certainly would have decreased in terms of the volume with the volatility that's in the crypto markets. But please understand that the cryptocurrencies are still built on blockchain. We're not talking about cryptocurrencies here, we're talking about blockchain. And so what I wanted to finish with here is that blockchain actually also allows DAOs to be formed. Now, I could spend some more time on this later if you want me to, and this is one of the reasons why we've got things like the digital real estate mastermind, so that we can go really deep into this with people like David Orban, Paul Nadira, Willem van der Post, and others that are experts in the space. But a DAO is basically a decentralized autonomous organization. There's no more middleman, and effectively it's decentralized. And why this is becoming a reality is that there's 4 things that are converging. The first one is organizational decentralization. Second is peer production. The third is crypto, trust, and consensus. And the third is unbundling and deregulation. Now, we're not there yet, but this is where the world is going. And, distributed autonomous organizations are really, really interesting, and certainly something that, one will need to understand over the next 5 years in terms of exchanges and controls, and even how businesses are going to be run. So let's look at number 2, artificial intelligence. Basically, Ray Kurzweil said artificial intelligence will reach human levels by around 2029. Follow that out further to say 2045, and we will have multiplied the intelligence, the human biological machine intelligence of our civilization by a billionfold. And that's quite interesting. If you've got children, my son is only 6, so by 2029 he will only be 17, and by 2025, what is that? That's not even 20 years. He won't even be 40 yet. And I myself, by 2025, that is 27 years away, I'll only be 68. And yet the intelligence of AI will be a billionfold of our current human brains. Now, I'm not sure if you can fully conceptualize what I'm actually saying here. And what's going to be really interesting is that we're going to have Google Glass. We're probably going to have bits in our brains, and they'll be basically plugging directly into the internet and the intelligence, so that we effectively have superhuman intelligence in terms of where it's going. Now, You might think that that's against religion. You might think that that's not possible. It's not a case of if, it's just a case of when. Then let's look at big data. So, what is big data? Well, it's basically just getting loads of data from all over the world. And really, when I wrote my book, Property Going Global, it was primarily, trying to show people where to get all the data, and then basically giving them algorithms so that they could make intelligent decisions for themselves. Now, when you take the fact that, I only showed people a small amount of data in this book, but now you can get access to so much data, and you've got algorithms to be able to sort it, and you've also got quantum computing. I believe that the world gets so exciting because we can create real personalized journeys. So let me give you an example. Well, if you take an investor test, like our investor test, and you can start to get specifics on who you are as an individual, where you are, and where you want to get to. Now, that's not your mate. That's not even your wife. That's you as an individual. Or maybe it's you and your wife together. It's not your children. It's you as an individual and what you're looking to achieve. And what's fascinating is that you can take all that information. You can then take a system like GIDS, which is our global investment due diligence system, where it's pulling in all the information around the partner, the project. It's taking into account all the stuff I spoke about with regards to community due diligence, et cetera, et cetera. And if you bring the two together with big data, with algorithms, and with time, even quantum computing, you get to the place where people can allow effectively collaborative smart investing. And what is that? Well, it basically helps you make intelligent decisions for yourself. So there's no estate agent, there's no broker. You say what you want, and it helps you find what you want. And most importantly, it helps you make the right decisions. So as an example, you say, right, I want to retire by the age of 50, and you put in an option there to invest possibly in South Africa. And, it says, well, you won't retire by 50, you'll retire by 65 based on long-term trends and rand devaluation and whatever else. And then you put in there, well, I invest in America and, in this particular asset. And it's like, well, you could retire by the age of 47. And it makes you make those right decisions. And then it also helps you on an ongoing basis track your progress. That future is not that far away. Then you've got VR and AR. And, one of the biggest successes that we've had in the last decade was taking people on buyers trips. I don't believe that's going to be around for much longer. People will just be able to put a headset. In fact, I've got a headset right here. This is the Wealth Migrate headset. So basically all you've got to do is you take this out, you put your cell phone in here, you close it up, and it's literally this simple. And then you can sit here with your headset on, and you can look around, up, down. So I see a future where, people will go on buyers trips from the comfort of their living room and won't have to go anywhere. And then you've got augmented reality, which is where it's half real and half digital. And whether it's through your cell phone and you're looking up houses and you can see who owns them, or, commercial properties and what the opportunities are. Obviously, it won't only be around property, it could be restaurants or anything else. Or basically you're using Google Glass or the equivalent of it, where you're living in a mixture between a real world and an augmented reality world. And, I look forward to this future where when I meet people, I can't remember their name, it'll quickly scan LinkedIn and give me the information. But you can imagine how intelligent we get once this plugs into artificial intelligence. Then you go O2O, and this is online to offline. This is something that's becoming really quite popular, and a lot of people don't understand it. It's why SoftBank Vision Fund, so I can't pronounce the guy's name, but like Kumashi or something, he's the founder of SoftBank's son. He basically launched the Vision Fund, and you can see there that he's raised $93 billion, and that's the size of it. And look at it in comparison with all the other funds, and then all the venture capitalists. He's basically just made them redundant. And what's also interesting is where they're investing. So they basically invested in Arm, which is Alibaba. They invested in WeWork. They invested in Uber. And if you look at all of those, I mean, WeWork is basically an online environment to, renting office space. Uber is an, online environment to catching a taxi. And so this is where they believe the future is going. And what's fascinating is Roger Hamilton this weekend spoke about there's 3 stages to the internet. There's Web 1.0, which is where it was just static online on your desktop. And really, it took off in 1995, but people only started to pay attention to it in 1998. And then we got Web 2.0, and that was really social media. It took off in 2005, but people only really started to pay attention to it in 2008. And now we're going to Web 3.0, which is, Web 2.0 is also smartphones, etc. So social media and smartphones interacting. And now we're going to Web 3.0, which is this whole O2O. And it really started around 2015. And it's, really everyone's starting to take notice of it now in 2018. The next trend is global connectivity. And it's absolutely fascinating. In 2017, 3.8 billion people on the planet had internet usage. You can see there in green, and the global population in blue, just more than 7 billion. By 2022 to 2025, there'll be 100% internet connectivity for the entire global population. It basically means 4.2 billion new minds will be joining the global economy. And people say, how's that possible? Well, basically, Richard Branson and Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg are all sticking satellites up through various different mechanisms. By 2020, 70% of people in Africa alone will have smartphones. And so this becomes very feasible. And most of these people are unbanked. They're not part of the global economy. And now they will be. And what's fascinating is when you consider the impact that that's going to have on the global economy in terms of where the world's going. So if you're negative about the future, this slide alone gets me very excited. What about 3D printing? So let me go. I've got a little video for you again. And let's look at the first house that was 3D printed in Russia. Now, when you start to understand this, it gets really interesting, because when you take property into account, one of the most important things of property is intrinsic value. Now, what happens if the intrinsic value of a property is X, but someone can print it for a lot less? So, pretty interesting, eh? So watch that space, because that's also going to have a big impact on property and property prices. And then the eighth one is the digital layer. And this is where it all comes together. This is where IoT and the little gadgets, the little wearables, whether I've taken my watch off at the moment, but little wearables like this one, and your phone and, devices, someone like David Orban already has a microchip in his body. All the little gadgets that are in your cars and all over, there's going to be billions and billions and billions of them, and it all will intersect into the digital layer. And this is really something that becomes quite important. So those are the 8 major trends, exponential technologies that I see impacting the property and real estate industry. What about the social trends? So again, going back to the white paper, I spoke about these social trends, and again, there's 8 of them. We've got social commerce and collaborative investing. So this is where people are coming together. It's basically increasing their returns and reducing their risk. We've got the rise of the middle class in emerging markets and the 3 billion unbanked people joining the global economy. As you would have seen from my slide, it's probably even higher through mobile adoption and internet connectivity. You've got globalization, where local volatility is creating conditions where investors desire diversification across countries, assets, and currencies. I mean, if you take England as an example, with Brexit, they're quite concerned if you talk to the British. If you talk to Americans, they're a bit concerned that North Korea might bomb them. If you take New Zealand, obviously Dolph Tourist, learned a big lesson there when they had the earthquakes. Diversification is something that truly the wealthiest people have always done, and now everyone wants to. Blockchain and cryptocurrencies, as I've said already, it's increasing trust and massively reducing the friction costs. So this is more, not so much on the technology side, but on the social side. You know, when someone moves money cross-border, the poorest of the poor get nailed 10 to 20%. And cryptocurrencies allow this to happen in a much more frictionless, cost-effective way. The social pressure to democratize the access to wealth and empower the 99%, it's growing every single year. And, you know, you only have to listen or read anything from Davos to understand that. Gamification and learning while doing, I believe this is a really big one. You know, the education industry hasn't changed much in 200 years. And I believe it's going to fundamentally change the education system. And people aren't going to necessarily learn anymore. They're not going to go away and read my book. Like I joked in Johannesburg on Sunday, don't read my book. It's a bloody waste of time, in my opinion, because, you know, now it's more important to learn while doing. And personalization, you know, this is where people want personal solutions for themselves and their families. They want the power to create the freedom in their lives and have meaningful connections with their investments. You know, they don't want just the standard box approach that the bank and, you know, stockbrokers and insurance agents and whatever try and sell them. They want a personalized solution just for them, like what happens for people that have $100 million or more. And then investors want to have a purposeful impact. They want to be part of co-creating the future in terms of where things are going. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail. Well, if we look at social commerce and collaborative investing, you can see the link below. Just go to my LinkedIn profile, and the title is Does Wealth Migrate do crowdfunding, or is it more advanced than that? And you can see this article in a lot more detail. But basically what I did is I love to look at trends and long-term things. I created this graph where I basically took the period. So you can see here from the beginning of time to 1908. You've then got production and marketing. So what type of production or marketing was taking place? What type of commerce was taking place? What was the compliance or regulatory environments, including trust? And then which brand best represents that? So right in the beginning, it was craft production. It was individual vendors, you know, little street people selling their stuff. And it was pretty much all done by word of mouth. And, you know, the little local blacksmith is a good example. You know, 1908 to 1980, it was mass production, chain stores, branding, and, you know, Ford Motor Company is a classic example. 1934 to 2000, it became about lean production and mass marketing. You know, the regulators all came into about, and you got Toyota and even Amazon and Alibaba, which was where they went from lean production to digital production. Then you got social media, and you got companies like Facebook. You got crowdfunding that started in 2008, and it's all about social proofing, and you got sort of Kickstarter. And then from 2008, you got the sharing economy, and this is where it's all about digital marketplaces. It's about social reputation and everything I've just showed you. And you got the likes of Uber and Airbnb. And then you started from 2013 to get equity crowdfunding, and this is where the Jobs Act and everything came in, and there's companies like Crowdcube. And then from 2014 onwards, you got cryptocurrencies, you got exchanges, you got distributed ledgers, and you got the likes of Bitcoin. And then in 2017, it really started exploding, like I showed you, in ICOs. It's what we call social commerce. It's got all of the above in terms of regulation and things like Ethereum. Okay, I'm just going to turn off my webcams because it said my internet's not working very well. I'll turn it back on just now. And then what I basically said here is you've got the future and you've got collaborative smart investing, and we believe that you know, a company like Wealth Migrate epitomizes what is happening. So just quickly, Len, you're saying no visuals. I'm hoping you should have them now. The second one is the rise of the middle class in emerging markets. Now, this is again a study that we did across Africa, China, India, Malaysia, Indonesia. And you can see that 1.2 billion people are going to be joining the middle class over the next 10 years. That's a 1.8 times growth, or an 80% growth. And when you consider that 400 million people in China joined the middle class in the last 20 years, and you look, you know, somewhere between 200 and 400 million, and you look at the impact that they've had on the global economy, you know, this is really material. I mean, this is basically 4 to 5 times at least that impact globally in terms of where it is. Okay, let's look here. So what about globalization? Well, when you look at global capital flows, they grow year on year. And what's really interesting is that there's even more coming out of the emerging markets into the first world. I still tend to say to people, this is the top 1% of the top 1%. And it hasn't even got started yet. It's literally in its baby phases. What about blockchain and cryptocurrencies? So this is from Gartner. I have actually put the source here on the bottom right side if you want to go and look it up. And what's fascinating here is that the blue line is the growth. So you can see the huge growth in sort of blockchain and what's happening 2018, 2019, and then it follows the Gartner hype cycle, and you can see it goes up and down. But what's more important is that in the orange is the millions of dollars, up to literally 3.5 billion dollars. Is that right? Anyway, I'm not sure if that's billion or trillion. It's a lot of noughts for me. But you can see how even though the growth, is up and down, the ongoing investment and the size of the industry changes dramatically between now and 2030. Don't underestimate blockchain and where the world is going. What about social pressure? I watched the Global Citizen event this morning while I was preparing this presentation. And, they talk about the sustainable goals from the UN. And what I find fascinating is number one, not number two, not number three, not number 17. Number one is no poverty and to solve poverty. And they want to achieve this by 2030. And this is what I mean by those social pressures. Number 6 is the gamification and learning while doing. We did discuss this, but it provides instant feedback. It's a better learning environment. It's prompting behavioral change. It can be applied to the most learning needs, and it basically impacts the bottom line. And truly, in my opinion, you really must watch the space in terms of where gamification is going. In terms of personalization, the stats are pretty overwhelming. Most people spend more time if it's personalized. 90% of marketers believe it's the future, and 74% of consumers get frustrated now unless it's personalized. And even at Wealth Migrate, it's something that we are really going to try and invest in 2019 to give you personalized. So if you only ask for England, you only get stuff on England. If you only ask for stuff about technology, you only hear about that. And then the last one is investors wanting to have a purposeful impact. I actually found this book this morning, which looks really interesting. I haven't read it, but The Power of Impact Investing, putting markets to work for profit and global good. Richard Branson talks a lot about purpose and profit. And if you think that it's immaterial, $50 billion was invested in impact investing in 2009, $500 billion in 2014, and $1 trillion by 2020. Now, let's take those 8 technological trends and those 8 social cultural trends and bring them together. And this graph was done, or this picture was done by Paul Nero, one of our board members. And you can see the link down the bottom here. If you want to go and read all about it, it's a LinkedIn article on why these 8 trends from both sides are intersecting. So take Ray Kurzweil, where he says, look for 2 or 3 that are intersecting. Our belief is that between 2020 and 2025, all of these trends at some stage are all going to be interacting. So you don't just have 2 or 3 interacting, you've got 16 intersecting in terms of where the world is going. And it's why it presents such a significant opportunity. When one looks at the user engagement, you can see if you go through what we've just been through, people have been consuming, then they're participating, then they're transacting, and then they started investing. And you can see time. So it started with publishing, people consuming stuff online. Then it was social media where they were participating. Then it was e-commerce where they were transacting. And now we're going into the investing online or social commerce. And what's really important here is that people want share of wallet, they want sticky money, and they want annuity income. All 3 things that we are, as a business, are very much focusing on in terms of where it's going. And what does it even sticky money mean? Well, if you think about it, when I was 12 years old, my bank gave me a bank card, and to this day, I'm 41 years old, and I still bank with them, albeit private banking, but I still bank with them, both business and personal. And so our belief is that once we get you into the system, even if you're very young, you're probably going to stick with us for a very long time because it's quite sticky and quite difficult to move to another platform. So let's look at our ecosystem. Now, this is really a window into the future. And we've got Wealth Migrate, which most of you know, and effectively this helps people invest around the world in property. We've effectively just launched the Wealth University, which is the whole education side, which I'll explain more. We've got the Wealth Movement, which are live events. We've done live events since 2015, and really it's the purposeful impact to empower 1 billion people. And then we've got Wealth Create, which is where when we get it down to $1 per person per investment, it'll be the same technology, but it'll be a different user experience, and it'll generally just be localized in country for people to be able to get started and using gamification, etc. I tend to say to people, the same company like Coca-Cola can have Coke, and it can also have Volpre sparkling water. Let me just see if I get my webcam going again, if it works. I'll try it again in terms of where we're at. So let's go into this ecosystem a little bit, because this is something that I designed many years ago, and Jay Thompson actually helped me portray it visually. And we've got a great video, which I'm not going to play today, but if you go and look for the ecosystem video, or just type in your ecosystem, and we can share with you the ecosystem video, which really explains where we want to go over the next 5 to 10 years. Now let's look here quickly in terms of the ecosystem integration. What's really important with any client is you want to take them on a client journey. And you can see you've got Wealth Create. So this is the wealth increasing, and this is the members' needs. You've got Wealth Create, then you've got Wealth Migrate, then you've got the Inner Circle. On this side, you've got the Wealth University, Wealth Migrate, and Wealth Assist. You've got entry-level products, you've got your portfolio, and you've got long-term investing. And you can see over here, you've got difference between leads, prospects, and conversions. And I don't have time tonight to talk about it, but you've got gamification, you've got reports, you've got online social experience, and you can see the whole process. Now, just my interest, for those of you who see Wealth University and stuff coming out, these were slides that were built in 2015. And what's really exciting for me now is that we have positioned ourselves to be able to unlock this whole ecosystem in 2019, and things like the Wealthy Coin become the catalyst to enabling this to happen. Now let's look quickly at all 4 of these brands. The first one is Wealth Migrate. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because everyone probably understands what Wealth Migrate does already. But in simple terms, we wanted to ask ourselves the question, how can we make global real estate investing easy? And now people, we had a testimonial on Sunday where someone tried to invest overseas. It took them more than 6 months, and they came on our platform from beginning to end. It took them 6 minutes, which I loved. It wasn't me, it's what the gentleman said. They get access to the best partners, the best opportunities. They can invest from $1,000. We are beta testing $100, and hopefully even once we get the new banking licenses, we want to bring that even down to $10. And so it takes away from all the hassles, the management, the maintenance, and that's just local investing. Once you go global, it's complex tax structures and bank accounts and a lot of complexity and difficulty. And so we just help people do it in a simple, safe way. I basically look at the best returns. Our model is really simple. You basically got trusted partners. So for us, in terms of the due diligence, it's very much about multiple different levels. But one of the most important parts is the partner and the partner's track record. And if they pass the partner test, then they can list their assets or their opportunities on the platform. Global investors like you and me can participate. We can go in the investments, and it all happens through the marketplace. In terms of some of those partners, we've got a wide variety of quality partners around the world in England, Australia, America, and South Africa. We've had a variety of different types of properties, everything from medical opportunities to a Big 5 game reserve. And interesting enough, the Big 5 game reserve, we had 228 investors from 20 different countries invest $4 million to buy a Big 5 game reserve. So whether it's buildings like this, which are medical commercial in America, or this, which was also medical commercial in America, or this, which was residential buildings in England, or this, which was industrial buildings in Australia, people can now participate. Also, they no longer need to choose whether they want to invest in America, England, Australia, or even South Africa. They can diversify. And I see a future where, not that quickly, because the technology needs to get better, but I see a future where one day all 193 countries will be represented, where people can invest both locally and internationally through the system. There's 4 simple steps. People basically sign up in a compliant way. They find the investment that suits them. We do not give financial advice, and I don't believe that we should. I don't believe that I'm any more intelligent than you are to make the right decisions for you and your life. And so we give people the tools to make the right smart decisions, smart investment decisions for themselves. They can then transact online, and the part I like most is they can manage their entire global portfolio in one place. In terms of the track record, there's clearly a demand. We've now got members in 125 countries. We've done over $520 million in deals. We've moved more than $80 million through the platform. Just by the way, if you weren't at the Wealth Partner dinner on Saturday, all these metrics were quite big milestones, all achieved in the last week. We won a whole bunch of awards, and something I'm proudest of is we've got a higher than 70% reinvestment rate. And if you want to look at what 125 countries looks like, that's the distribution across the world. And clearly, we've got to figure out a way to get someone in Greenland investing. When one looks at the competitor landscape, I got asked this today actually by someone in England, because there's a lot of platforms that are out there. In fact, there's, by last count, 250 different platforms, and every single one of them is in country. So a lot of people see them as competitors. Well, two things. Firstly, when I catch an Uber, the last thing I want to do is have a different app in every country. And I certainly don't want to have a different app for my investments all over the world. And so we decided to be global. But the other thing that's really important is that all these platforms are in-house, and we basically want to provide them with a global solution. So anyone that is a trusted local partner, we want them to plug into the trusted global real estate marketplace. And that gets really quite exciting, because when you look at our business model, there's 7 different parts to a property transaction. There's a whole bunch of different players, from sponsors to platforms. And what Wealth Migrate provides is 7 different business models, and they range from B2C, as in business to consumer, B2B, which is business to business, in terms of channel partners, or what we call a business in a box, and something we invented, my business partner Lyndon Booth invented it, called B2P, which is business to platform. And that's where, 2 years ago, I was working with Alibaba. They own Alipay, and they got 300 million people on Alipay, and they were wanting to help them invest in, as an example, American property. And I was also working with Realty Mogul, which is an American platform, and they wanted to get into China. But between the two of them, they couldn't figure it out. And we basically wanted to help them wealth migrate their money from Alibaba or Alipay to Realty Mogul. And at the time, our tech wasn't good enough. But now this becomes a reality with version 5. And it's really quite exciting when one considers where the world goes. And here's just a little picture which sort of sums it up, where we can basically enable platforms to go global, and for us to be the trusted network. In terms of Wealth Create, this is a very simple graph, but one that I drew many, many years ago to the original board members. And I said we're going to go through a 3-phase process. We're going to start with where the sophistication of the investors is really quite high. Our minimum investment was $10,000. Then we're going to move to phase 2, where we can drop that minimum investment. And the way I'd see it is that's sort of between $1,000 to $10,000, which is currently where we're at. And then finally, you can go really horizontal, and that's where you can get it down to like $10, and even with time, $1. And you can see that the red is the sophistication of the investor is decreasing. And you can also see that the money-making opportunities increase. And the reason being is that as you scale the community, there are numerous ways to monetize both supply and demand. So the brand we created is Wealth Create. We haven't actually launched the platform here. Now, to be the exact same tech, but we would launch this locally. It'd probably be a franchise model around the world, again, plugging into the global trusted network, which would be Wealth Migrate. And really it would be for people that are spending $1 to $1,000. And it's through that brand that ultimately we will be able to fulfill our vision, which is to make global real estate investing as easy as a swipe of a finger, and ultimately to get it down to $1. And people always say to me, $1, it's not going to make any difference. And I always say to them, it won't. But what will make a difference is it'll change people's habits. And if you change their habits, you'll change their financial destiny. And what's fascinating to me is that, if you get it to $1, there's not a person on the planet that has an excuse not to get started. So when you look at the future global real estate marketplace, you can see that we've pretty much just spoken about the investment side when it comes to Wealth Migrate and Wealth Create. When you look at the education side, that's our next area that we're targeting. And then with time, we'll target the service, the rent, the buy, and the sell. And you can see here, white is waiting, amber is underway, and green is done already. So why education? Well, what's fascinating is you can see that there's been huge adoption in online education. And even though there's been large growth in online investing, there hasn't been large adoption. If you overlay that with the same graph that I started this presentation, you can see old model, new model, old power values, new power values. Basically, by providing online education, you can build trust. And by building trust, you will dramatically close this gap of mass adoption. And that's why Wealth Migrate sits here right up in the top right segment, and it's why the Wealth University provides this ability to solve this problem. Now, the metaphor I give people is that Wealth Migrate is like the hot air balloon basket, and Wealth University is like the big balloon. It's the one that's going to drag the exponential growth as people all over the world will be able to participate. It also allows you to globally scale because there's no compliance issues around people learning. So let's look at the Wealth University in a bit more detail. You know, we really want to empower people with knowledge, self-belief, and the ability to create the wealth they want in their lives. So we created the Wealth University. We created the investor test, which is like your sort of gateway in to help you know, because if you've got loads of products, you need to know where you are, you need to know where you want to get to, and then you need a personalized path to get there. You get an investment report, not only in terms of where you're at on the investor test, but you get I think it's about a 20-page investment report, which is personalized for you. So this is like the key to unlock the door to your wealth. Then basically we've got all the free products. So we've got a 8 steps micro degree on the 8 steps to wealth through real estate. That's on both Genius U and on Udemy. That's the largest the largest online marketplace in the world. We've got my book. We've got the different white papers. So whether you're a beginner, an intermediate, or advanced, we've got the different groups on both WhatsApp and Telegram. Every week I do wealth insights. You know, there's one I did recently with Paul Dunn, who's an amazing guy. And then every month I do webinars with amazing individuals that I can find around the world, and that's all free, so that we can share the knowledge. And then we go to paid for, and you know, in January 2019 we're going to be launching our paid for Inner Circle. I don't have time tonight to go into this, but it's really an online community where people can come together, they can learn together. It's an onboarding process so that they can get started, and you know, not only for yourselves but for your children. You know, I believe this is one of the greatest gifts that you can give them. It costs $250 per year or $25 per month, and it's really an ecosystem to learn, to grow, and you know, you can go to the different websites, which I'll post. I should probably put them below in terms of that information. If you're interested in a circle, just type in a circle. Then we've got the Digital Real Estate Mastermind. This is where we're bringing together the best in 6 areas: blockchain, cryptocurrency, exponential technology, future trends, the consumer of the future, and then global real estate, bringing it all together. And we'll really be, this is a mastermind, which is again starting in January 2019, which is going to be led by some of the global thought leaders. Once a month, they'll be making a short video, no more than a TED talk, on the changes that are happening in their specific area over that 12 months. Over that month. We'll be running a webinar with one expert per month. And there's no course, obviously, because we're learning, all of us are learning while doing, but it's remaining at the cutting edge of where technology and property are going. And then you've got the Global Real Estate Mastermind, and this is our most premium product, where I am inviting 10 people on a journey with me starting in January, where we basically are going to set ourselves up for success as a mastermind. It's all about becoming a global citizen. We'll be setting goals. We'll be running through the 8 steps, which I put in the micro degree, and most importantly, we'll be holding each other accountable and learning and growing together. Obviously, this is not scalable at all. That's me working with 10 very committed people. And then lastly, we've got the Wealth Movement. This is what gets me out of bed every morning. This is our purpose and our passion. And we really, you know, I told you we did the research in 2012, 2013 about the billion people. I think we called it Project W Wealth, which was a terrible name. In 2014, we renamed it the Wealth Movement. And the tagline for the Wealth Movement is creating a sustainable and better planet for all. And there's 3 parts to the Wealth Movement. Oh, sorry, just before I get to the 3 parts, there's a real need for the Wealth Movement. Now, you know, this year, the stats came out that the top 1% own 53% of the world's wealth, and that gap is just getting wider and wider. When you look here, where people live in the world has a dramatic impact on their worldwide wealth. If you're a lady, less than 10% of billionaires are ladies. I've heard reports that, you know, and I don't know how accurate they are, but even less than 1% of the world's wealth is held by ladies, and yet they're 50% of the world's population. And if you're a millennial, you were just born in the wrong time. And so this is a real need. I mean, this really is a problem that has to get solved. And then when it comes to property, the biggest challenge is, why is this wealth gap getting worse? Well, and even the stock market, it's because the 99% are not investing like the top 1%. They're stuck in one country. They've got very high barriers to entry when it comes to residential, commercial, and international. And once they go overseas, it gets extremely difficult, complex. And so because of that, the 99% just don't invest in the same assets as the top 1%. And the asset growth is what's causing the top 1% to outstrip the 99%. So why is that important? Well, 49% of the world's wealth is held in property, and yet only 12.9% of the world's population actually has access to that property. And what's fascinating to me is, of that 12.9% in the Western world, as I started with on this webinar, less than 1% of people retire wealthy. And we think that's disgusting. And so our purpose is to empower the 99% and to allow them to invest like the top 1%, using technology. And so our social promise, this is actually a poem written by Hilda Lunderstedt. She is one of the largest investors in this organization, one of the anchor investors. She's also a board member. And she wrote this manifesto for us in early 2015. Imagine a world where most people, or all people, are literate, a world where education is par for the course, a world where women are treated as equals, a world where all people have access to wealth. Imagine a world where 6 billion people on the planet who currently live in poverty can actually get access to wealth. Imagine that world. Sorry, it's cut off here for some reason. The wealth movement aims to create that world. Now, if you want to go and read the whole thing, it's on wealthmovement.com, and you can go and look at the website. Most people don't know, but there's actually a very interactive website, and there's a whole lot of videos. There's hundreds of videos on there from our events, and you'll see that there's three major focuses to the wealth movement. The first one is empowering children with entrepreneurship education. The second one is empowering women with access to financial understanding and education. 2/3 of the world's illiteracy is women, and so it's a major challenge to empower women, particularly with financial education and access to investing. And then the third part is empowering the 99% to be able to invest like the top 1% using technology. What excites me is in 2019, we are going to form a global partnership. We've already formed the partnership, but we're going to integrate the tech with B1G1. I would recommend you go and check this out. It's a very seamless way to integrate purpose into your business. If you look at the video or the interview I did with Paul Dunn, he started it 10 years ago. You can see that they've now done 166 million impacts around the world. And I love it because, I see a future where people can go online on our platform, they can be investing in a medical deal, and they can be, investing in a purpose. And, I tend to say it's people, it's profit, it's property, and it's purpose. And when we get those four P's aligned, I believe that our platform will scale quite dramatically. And so let's bring that all together. Let's look at Amazon. Started in 1995, and 23 years later, it's a global behemoth, and it's really dominated the retail space across all different sectors. And I see a future over the next 20 years where there will be an Amazon of global real estate, bringing it all together. And tonight, I only shared 4 parts of the ecosystem. I didn't even share some of the extra parts that I showed you on that world map. And so the question I've got for you is, can you afford not to be part of the Amazon of real estate? And, I want to discuss the Big Bang quickly. I have brought this up in a couple of webinars. So 3 weeks ago, we did a webinar with Roger Hamilton. It was a fascinating webinar around where the global trends are going, where the unicorns are going to be, which are billion-dollar companies. And he also spoke a lot about the Big Bang. I'd really recommend that you watch that if you haven't watched the webinar. And what was fascinating in 1967 is that the average stock was only held for 6 years. And today, it's held on average for 22 seconds. And that's because of 2 things. It's because of technology and globalization. And really, it's fascinating. When you look at a company like E-Trade, it really allowed that to happen. It allowed people to easily be able to access stock markets around the world, very low barriers to entry. It's now a $13 billion company with revenues of over $3 billion a year. Now, it started in 1982, and so it's more than 40 years old. And when you look at the property industry, the average age of that people own a house in America today is 8.7 years. And I see a future where that's going to get dramatically digitized, and I think the stock market gives you a very good metaphor of what's going to happen. The question I've got for you is whether it's Wealth Migrate and all the different ecosystems I've showed you, or someone else. I can't guarantee you, but I can guarantee it's going to happen. And the question I got from you is, will it take 40 years? So that's why I believe the Amazon of global real estate is an opportunity, a generational opportunity sitting in our hands. And what most people don't know is that $10,000 invested in Amazon pre-IPO is actually worth $12 million today. And I believe that's the sort of thing that people can expect when one finds an industry as old and archaic as the property industry that is rapidly being disrupted by technology. And hopefully you've seen the 16 different trends that are intersecting. Who's going to win the race? Well, no one knows that. I believe we've got a pretty comprehensive board and leadership team, a combination of technology and property expertise. I've been playing at the intersection of both of those for 20 years. And we also balanced in geography across 5 different continents. If there's one thing we're lacking, it's enough ladies in our leadership team and in our board. And it's certainly something we'll be looking to work on over the next couple of months and years. In terms of our financials, this information is all available both on the CEDAS platform and in the one pager. If you want to get access to it, we've got our valuations, but I'm not going to talk about this because last week we did a webinar. I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, we did a webinar with Richard Dunn and Gavin. Gavin's our CTO on the tech. Richard Dunn talking about the global real estate marketplace and where it's going. So if you want to watch that where we went into detail. Last week with Ken Williams, we went into the financials and valuations. So I'm not going to talk about that because you can watch the recording if you want. And I'll put all the recordings down below. Let's actually just write that. Different webinar recordings below. And if you're still listening, I'll also put in all the Wealth University links below, just so that you've got them. Okay. In terms of the financials, there's really 3 major drivers. We basically got our number of transactions, we've got our average fee, and we've got our average transaction size. We want to be a $1 billion company, which means we need to be earning a revenue of at least $100 million. To achieve that, we need to increase our transactions. We need to decrease our transaction size. We're aiming in a calendar year to do 1 million transactions with an average fee monetizing the buy and sell side of 5%, with an average transaction of $2,000, and that equals $100 million, which is a $1 billion business. And it keeps everyone very focused on what's important in our business. As I've said to you, I'm not going to talk about this because we went through it last week, but you can see in terms of what we're expecting in terms of revenue growth, and then equally what we're expecting in terms of share price growth over that time. And that's why I, jokingly refer to it as the Amazon of global real estate. A lot of people want to know about exit strategies. Well, there's 4 major exit strategies. Firstly, we've got a liquidity event. So I believe if you've got a private company like an Uber, an Airbnb, or a Tesla, that have been private now for 10 years, there's a lot of pressure to list them. And so the way they solve that to provide liquidity is they've got an annual liquidity event once a year. I took best practice. I went and studied all of them. It's written into our shareholders agreement where we have an annual liquidity event. It's not to incentivize people to sell, but it provides them a way to sell on a fixed price basis with a fixed price calculation. And again, we copied best practice. We didn't do that this year because we've been through the restructure and obviously we are doing the CEDAS campaign. So the closest that would be a year from now. The second one is a strategic sale where we're looking at a social media platform like a Facebook, that wants to get access to a much stickier investment for their members, a bank or investment firm that wants to, has lost contact with the clients and wants to get back in contact with the clients, and a retail real estate firm that wants the same thing. It's all about the customer experience and looking after the customer. The third one is a dual listing between the London Stock Exchange and the Hong Kong Exchange. And, that certainly is something that we've been aiming for. And Ken Williams, has 20 years experience in that space. And then the fourth one is a little bit out there, but if you take those DAOs that I spoke about, maybe we won't be traditionally listing in the next 5 to 7 years. We might be tokenizing the business. And so just putting it out there. But we want to, over a 5 to 7 year period, 10x people's capital in terms of where we are. And so in conclusion, how did we come about this? Well, there's a great book here by Mark Benioff. It's called Behind the Cloud. And, in 2014, I was reading this book, and basically in 1999, which is when Salesforce started, he went to all the venture capitalists and he said to them, I've got a great idea. We're going to put CRM, which stands for Customer Relationship Management, in the cloud. And they said it's never going to happen. People will never allow their names to leave their servers in their building. And so he went to his clients and he said, well, why don't you invest? And they did. And they raised $64 million back in those days. And today it's the 14th biggest technology company in the world, and it's worth, $50 billion. And what's fascinating is that it's not only about the profit that the investors made, but also how they participated. It's the participation premium that really grew the company. And I love that community component where everyone's winning together. And so with that basis and the fact we were building a tech company and it's really quite capital intensive, you go through what's called the J curve as you're growing the platform before, because your costs are higher than your revenue. And then the third thing was we had our investors coming to us in the deals saying they want to be part of the platform. And so in 2014, we launched our wealth partner concept. In 2015, we launched our wealth collaborative economy, which is the 6 different areas to our wealth partner community. You can see real estate. So this is where I would see community due diligence, see investment due diligence, things like community due diligence coming in. You've got technology, and years ago we were talking about digital currency, and we made that a reality. You've got investors both online and offline, and things like gamification. You've got the vision and mission, which is where Wealth University and wealth movements come in, because it's how we can impact 1 billion people. You've got exponential, and if you don't know about this and what ideas and scale are, I'd highly recommend going to read this book, which is by Salah Mashmal on exponential organizations, which is a great book. And then you've got all the different business components. And we tend to say that it's empowered people who are looking to co-create a better world for all. Now, what's fascinating to me is that I believe there's 3 reasons people become wealth partners. The first reason is that they want to be part of a profitable enterprise. And hopefully tonight I've explained why I certainly believe it's got tremendous opportunity financially. The second is that they want to be part of a global community, exactly what I'm showing you here, of like-minded people. They can go after the niches that they love, they can learn, they can grow, and our intention is to grow them into global citizens. We've already got 140 wealth partners around the world, and with the Seeders campaign, that will be growing in the region of over 500 people. And the third is that they want to have a purposeful impact on the planet. They believe that their life is more than just profit, and they want to be remembered. It's about their destiny, about their legacy. It's about waking up every morning in terms of purpose. And we tend to find wealth partners resonate with all 3 of those components. And so just quickly, I want to play you a quick video here. And this is a video we made recently. We asked all our wealth partners 1 word to explain the experience of being a wealth partner. I am conscious of the time. I knew this would be a long webinar. When you get me started when it comes to passion and something I'm so passionate about, I have got a lot to share, but I'm nearly done. So let's get this video up. There it is. This is what our wealth partners had to say about the experience of being a wealth.
Inspired. Freedom.
Abundance.
Credibility. Enlightened.
Impactful.
Unimaginable.
Peace of mind.
Phenomenal.
Total honesty.
Reliable.
Genius.
Engaged.
Excited.
Hopeful.
Exponential.
Empowered.
Connected. Dream. Innovative.
Global diversity.
Opportunity.
Freedom.
Change.
Excited.
Ukamuso. Blessed.
Empowered.
Incredible. Privileged.
Revolutionary. Super. Disruptive.
Support.
Change.
Empowering.
Excited. Interesting.
Evolving. Global.
Opportunity.
Buzzing.
Powerful.
Fortunate.
It's possible.
Work.
Community.
Inkululeko.
Proud.
Transformative.
Fiddle.
Inclusive.
Satisfaction.
Trust.
Disha.
Discipline.
Secure.
Proud.
Fortunate.
Excited.
Driven.
Privileged. Community.
Spearheading.
Unlimited.
Excited.
I feel inspired.
Partnership.
Future.
Inspired.
Peace of mind.
Excited.
Metamorphosis.
Inspirational.
Freedom.
Abundance.
Pathfinders.
Empowered.
Inspired.
Purposeful.
Opportunity.
Engaged.
Passive income.
Transformation.
Generous.
Grateful. Rewarding.
Legendary.
Cash flow.
Diversified.
Interesting.
Exciting.
Freedom.
Gives me options.
Empowerment.
Highly innovative.
Exponential.
Bold.
Opportunities.
Grateful.
Freedom.
Absolutely inspirational.
Leading edge.
Empowering.
Adventure.
Game changer.
Groundbreaking.
International.
Liberating.
HOPEO. Phenomenal. Professional.
Life-changing.
Inspired.
Opportunity.
Freedom.
Independence.
Diversified.
Peace of mind.
Prosperity.
The future.
Being a wealth partner is empowering.
It every time. A lot of those people have become good friends over the years, and so it's really quite amazing. And to finish off, when one looks at technology companies, normally people can only participate once it goes to IPO. The Facebook and the Amazon. Most of us probably wished we could have got involved in Uber, Miso even more after what I saw tonight, that it's now $73 billion. Actually, it's more than it was. And then most people don't want to get sort of involved in ranked startups. And what our Wealth Partner community's done, and even with our Seeders campaign now, is it's allowed people to participate at the growth stage. And this is where the venture capitalists normally get involved. This is where the significant opportunity lies, albeit there's also risk because it's not as established as an Uber and Airbnb. But because you're going up the value chain, that is where the opportunity lies. And we're far from a startup when we've got members in 125 countries, $80 million through the platform, and facilitated over $500 million in terms of deals. And so we've gone to Seeders, we've launched on Seeders, we're live on Seeders. You can actually go to seeders.com /wealth migrate. I will just show you here very quickly. If I go to this page here, we're now live on Seeders. If you look here, we've got 246 investors. We've got $1.1 million. We're 150%. What that basically means is that we've got different investment targets. So we looked to raise £750,000 first, which was 100%. We did that in 48 hours. We then hit $1 million in another 48 hours, and we're now well on our way to £1.5 million, which is what we are looking for. You can see when I refreshed that, it went up by another investor, which is, I just love doing this. It's my my favorite pastime at the moment, going online. Hang on, are you looking? Yeah, you're looking at the screen. So you can go here, and what's interesting is you got the idea, you got the market, you got the team, you got the update, you got all the investors, you got discussions, and you've even got document requests, etc. So it's really, really fascinating for me. If you're in South Africa or Australia or America, you're not allowed to invest on the Seeders platform. We're not allowed to help everybody, but we have created a system where we can help certain individuals. We do have a minimum investment on Seeders. You can invest from £10. If it's offline, we've got a minimum investment of $1,000, which we call Blue Level. For that, people get access to the Wealth Partner community. They get to co-create the products. They get access to our e-Wealth Pack. They get access to the events. The shares are at $1.50. They get part of the purposeful journey. And we've also thrown in the inner circle for 12 months. So, it's certainly something that people can even give as a gift over Christmas. I believe it's the gift that will keep on giving. And if you are interested, you can email Megan at wealthmigrate.com directly, and she can assist you. Or you can just go onto this platform. And you can see the hyperlink there, wealthmigrate.com /campaigns /Seeders /general. And we basically created this just to help people if they were in South Africa, Australia, or America. They can then fill in their details, and we can see if you will qualify. You can also see that there's multiple levels here. So green is the lower level, then you've got blue level. Silver is, so blue level includes the inner circle. Silver level is a $10,000 investment, includes the digital real estate mastermind. Gold is a $25,000 investment or more. It includes the global real estate mastermind. And then platinum and diamond are anchor investors where we've got quite significant discounts and also Class A shares in terms of that process. So you can go on this link and go and look at it if you're interested, and we can assist you. I wanted to finish with a great little story, and this kid here, the one with the hat on, is Bongi. That's actually my son many years ago, and we basically got a charity out from America called Lemonade Day. We started in 2015, and these young boys worked so hard. I mean, it was the most amazing thing. I got down there on a Saturday quite late, and this kid had the biggest bloody Lemonade Day stand I'd ever seen. And I said, everyone had gone home. All the other kids had gone home. And he said, I'm not going home until I sell this thing. And, he basically was there day in and day out for 7 days. And this was a picture of them counting their cash. And they made more money than him and his dad make. His mom and his dad make in a month. They made 1,700 Rand profit, which is about $150. And this is a picture of his mom and him. He's an absolutely amazing kid. And he basically won an award to come up to a wealth movement event. And on the trip, he shared with me that his dream was to go to a private school. And so at the event, we basically did a crowdfunding event. And we basically crowdfunded him to go to a private school. He's been there for 3 years now. He's done incredibly well. He's captain of one of the provincial hockey sides. He's done very well in academics, and most importantly, he's just growing up as this amazing young boy. And although it's a private school and there's wealthy individuals, a lot of his peers go away in the July holidays and whatever. And when I saw him in July, he was working on the boats, making money. And I just love stories like this. I guarantee you that this kid, could be the next Elon Musk. And so anyone that supports the Cedars campaign or was part of this campaign, we will be ensuring that he finishes his last 2 years of what do you call it, tuition, and or you can just go straight on the campaign and support him. Please share it. He certainly is someone that is worth sharing. So I want to leave you with a story, and this is a picture of my wife and my son. They are playing Global Monopoly at the age of 5, and he's learning at a very young age that to own red houses and green hotels and earn a passive income is what we call smart investing. His father, with an incredible team, turned a childhood fantasy of technology and monopoly and turned it into a reality where he now has a diversified portfolio across 4 different continents, a mixture of residential and commercial property. It's what we call smart investing. The wealthiest people in the world focus on generational wealth. It's what we call smart investing. And we want to put smart investing in every single person's pocket. And I'll just leave you with a bit of quietness just to think about the impact that we could have on this planet when every single person has access to smart investing. It reminds me of a final story, which is a story that I was told by Hannes Dreyer many, many years ago, more than 15 years ago. And he spoke about a wise man. And there was this old wise man that lived in a village, and there was a young boy. And everyone, knew that this wise man was very, very intelligent. And so the young boy thought he was pretty intelligent himself. So he went up to the old man and he gave him a bird, and he put the bird in the old man's hand. And he said to the old man, he said, "Is the bird dead?" Or sorry, no, I lie. He went up to the old man, and he held the bird in his hand. And he went up to the old man and he said to the old man, "Is this bird dead or alive?" And the old man was very, very wise, and he thought about it for a while, and he thought, well, if I tell him that it's alive, he will just crush it and it'll be dead. And if I tell him it's dead, he'll open his hand and it'll fly away. And so he said, "Young man, the truth to your question, the answer lies in your hand." And tonight I've shared with you for nearly 2 hours on where I believe the future of property technology is going. But the answer as to what you do with it lies in your hand. Roger Hamilton talks about our impact and the impact meter. And at level 1, we can go out and we can help solve one person's problem. We can, we can be part of an intimate group. We can sort of, grow a team. We can start to become a market leader. We can have a national impact. We can impact the country that we live in. Or at a level 7, we can have a global impact, one with the power to leave a legacy. And if that's something that resonates with you, then I welcome you. I invite you to join our profitable and purposeful journey. You can go, if you live in England or Europe or any one of 32 countries like Chile and Russia and New Zealand, then you can go directly on Seedrs and you can invest. And if you don't, if you live in South Africa or Australia or America, then you could go on this link and we can see if we can, if you qualify. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that's all from me. It's a very long webinar. I understand that. It's with deep gratitude that I get to share these things that I'm so passionate about. And thank you for you all staying online. I want to answer any questions that anyone has. And while I'm doing that, I want to put up just 3 little polls. The more you personalize this, the more the team will be able to personalize your journey. Our time is valuable, and so is your time valuable. And so if you wouldn't mind just filling in this poll. And at the same time, if you've got any questions, fire away. I can certainly stay online for, as long as it takes. I know it's a huge amount of information. It's an overwhelming, to some extent, even daunting amount of information. But yeah, do me a favor, vote on the poll. And if you've got any questions, fire them through. So while we're looking, I see lots of people like the video. Boom, boom, boom. There's lots of comments. AI is a double-edged sword for humanity, risk of tyranny of a small minority of data owners. Yes, so Manu, I agree with you. If you look at the stuff that Elon Musk talks about, very much so. But every time we've had a technological revolution, whether it was the industrial age and all the farmers said they were going to go bankrupt, whether it was cars and all the, the Volkswagen people said the same thing, or even when it was computers that first came out, everyone will understand that the world got wealthier and that everyone's life got better off. And I tend to rather focus on the positives of what's possible. Winston said that he wants to tuck his kids in. So yes, Winston, don't worry, it's being recorded. For those of you interested in the inner circle, we'll certainly send you the details. I'll also, if you want the digital real estate mastermind, just type in digital, and if you want the global real estate mastermind, just type in global, and we can send you the details. I can probably actually let me give you the links to those just while we're live here. You can see you can actually do your investor test. So it's basically investortest.geniusu.com. Then if you go to the inner circle, you can see it's wealthmigrate.geniusu.com/inner circle. So you can see all around the inner circle. If you want to go to the digital real estate mastermind, it's wealthmigrate.com. wealthmigrate.geniusu.com/blockchain. And then if you want the global real estate mastermind with all the information, it's wealthmigrate.geniusu.com/mastermind. I will put the links below in the recording. And then lastly, just, if you're interested, you can actually go to wealthuniversity.org. So the site is actually up now. This was the staging site, but wealthuniversity.org is now up. And everything I just showed you is actually in one place. So if you want to go to one place, it's all here, and you can get access to everything. Now, it's a pretty simple landing page for now. We've got a much more complicated version 2 that we're wanting to build out, but it'll certainly get us started going in 2019, because we're going to be launching the inner circle and the 2 masterminds in January. Okay, let's see if we've got any questions there. By the way, no one contacted me. Okay, sorry about that, Mark. It's not too late, Mark, and I will find out why they didn't. That's a bit irritating. Although you do have that link as well that you could go to. But yeah, I'll try and make sure the team follows up with that. Francis said, till what date is the Seedrs campaign running? Francis, we basically have a hard stop, like I said, well, our target is 1.5 million pounds, and so that is our it's on or before we get to that amount. So it's not necessarily a date, it's a timing. And considering we had over 40 people invest today, which is super exciting. We've been trending as the #1 opportunity on the platform for more than a week. I get really excited about this. Just my interest, if anyone wants to vote on the poll, just go for it. I'm going to stop it pretty soon if you haven't voted already. Then a couple of people saying thanks very much. Shane's asking about the digital. Francis saying, will the Seeders campaign ends once the... Yes, so Francis, that's the intention. Unless I can get board approval to extend it a bit further. At the moment, the intention is 1.5 million pounds. And lots of people are complaining about the outages. So I'm going to close this poll, going once, going twice, and we are closing it. And then we've got our final poll, which is just some of the things of what do you want to do next. And yeah, I know a lot of people had load shedding issues, and so it is recorded, and we will send you the recording. I always say it's much better to come live because you can interact, but deeply grateful for all of you who've been online, and thanks for the energy. Just with regards to Eskom and load shedding, and for those of you who live overseas outside of a country like South Africa, you won't know what I'm talking about. But load shedding to me is a classic example of why you need to be a global citizen. I am deeply passionate that living in Africa is certainly the future. I'm bringing my children up here, and our family lives here. But I do believe that you need to have all the options. The thing that I'm most passionate about in life is giving people the freedom to make the right decisions for them and their family. And that's what I believe is about being a global citizen, which is why we do what we do. It's not just helping people invest, but it's also giving them the education and empowering them to make the right decisions, for their family. Okay, I can see the poll is up. I'm going to close it pretty soon. Phil has said, you said in the chat, Rep Diamantes, who is he? His name is Peter Diamantes. He's the guy that wrote this book here, Bold. And I would highly recommend reading this book, Bold. When you get the e-wealth pack, Phil, because you've just signed up as a wealth partner, and it's awesome to have you as part of the community, I will be sending you the e-wealth pack, and you'll actually get all my top books that I've read in the last 20 years across different sectors like exponential technology, business, leadership, etc., in terms of where we're at. Okay, let me close that out. In terms of co-founders, I presume you're talking about the business. So yeah, we are very much a team environment. There's a number of all the team are shareholders in terms of where we're at. And I originally started the business, and then a guy called Henny Besaidnout actually joined, and we grew that, and he's now running the property business in terms of that process. Stephanie, I appreciate your vision, but I have a hard time relating to the technology aspect. The talk with Ken was very helpful, but I'm losing confidence with the 2 deals on the platform. Yeah, look, I understand, Stephanie, in terms of, the big thing with regards to technology is that technology is not a fix-all. So with regards to Medical 13, the guys did the due diligence, and while they're doing it effectively, while we're raising, they're effectively also doing the due diligence. And I can guarantee you'd rather be investing and knowing that that the deal is a sound deal, and that we've got the capacity to pull a deal rather than push it through just so we can get the deal done, than the other way around. And so rather look at it as a positive, which is where sometimes when it comes to deals, it's why we call ourselves the trusted global real estate marketplace. It's not just about doing deals, but it's about helping people get involved with quality partners and quality opportunities. You spoke about Wealth E. I presume you're talking about the coin, Phil. Phil, you've got my is we co-founders. Sorry, I'm very confused now. Phil, you've got my WhatsApp. I'd suggest if you want to just WhatsApp me your question and I can help you. Francis says, I've invested in Seeders when we'll get confirmation of investment done, i.e. e-certificate or something similar, and waiting to make an additional investment. So Francis, with regards to that, Cedars close out the campaign once we hit the 1.5. They then go through a due diligence and a closeout period, which takes about 7 days, at which point they submit all of that. If you go offline, we do that all manually. We are using a system called Core Connects. And if you want to speak to me, or you can see my mobile number at the bottom of this video, send me a WhatsApp, and I'm happy to help you, or one of the team members can help you. Francis asked, has version 5 been released yet? Nearly there, Francis. We're days away. There were just one or two things that we wanted to make sure were sorted. And so, yeah, I'm actually down to Cape Town tomorrow to spend time with the team for 3 days. And I'm hoping we should have good news in the very near future in terms of that. So, no, not yet. And then, how is Jaco coming with South African investments? Good question. Ask him on the digital real estate group. I spoke to him. In fact, he sent me a message about an hour before the webinar started, saying he's very close now. Unfortunately, the medical deal didn't go ahead. It didn't pass due diligence, but he's got the whole structure set up in a compliant way with regards to FSP, etc. So, certainly something that we'll be bringing online in early 2019. Okie dokie. Well, that was certainly a long webinar. Shane's asking what marketing is done. If you're asking about distribution, Shane, there's 5 different types of distribution channels. The first one is everything I've just shown you about the education-based marketing, which is all the learning while doing. It's the Wealth University. It's very, very scalable. I mean, if you look at this, this website here, which is Udemy. So just look there, 1,333 students from 97 countries. Now let's just click and refresh that. So this is my micro degree that's on Udemy, and I'm going to be doing multiple micro degrees next year. Okay, so it did actually update. So 1,333 people from 97 countries. This is, for me, is where it gets truly, truly exciting because it's completely scalable, and it's what we call education-based marketing. The second one is digital marketing, all the traditional digital marketing methodology, and we're working with an amazing digital partner there. The third one is word of mouth. The fourth one is an affiliate and channel partner system. We've got quite a sophisticated system in place with over 150 affiliates and channel partners and/or channel partners around the world. And the fifth one is quite a unique concept that I learned from another great book, which is called Upstarts, around how Airbnb and Uber went global, and they call it marketplace rollout. And it's a system we've developed to be able to go into multiple countries. It's how we managed to get a footprint in 6 countries, and we want to really grow that at a local level, plugging into the global network. It's what we call our 5 distribution strategies. I don't know if, Shane, that's what you were asking. Right, it is 8:59. Is there one final question that anyone else would like to know, or should we call it a night or a day, depending on where you are? If you have been listening, thank you very much for spending the entire time. As I said to you, it's an honor and a privilege to share with you. I'm deeply, deeply passionate about it. If you think that it's something that could add value to your friends, please let them know about it. I believe we're all on a purposeful journey, and I really believe that the only way that we're going to succeed is if we make 1 + 1 = 11. And so I believe we've actually all got a responsibility to turn this and make this into a reality, which really excites me in terms of where we're going. Winston said, I'm an investor and a commercial industrial broker. Can I bring investment opportunities to Migrate? So yes, Winston, very much so. The only difference is, please don't bring us the opportunities, bring us the partners. We're not a brokerage. We're not private property or Prop 24. We basically, we help people invest with partners. So if you bring a trusted partner along with a deal, then we like to help people invest with those deals. Okay, Phil, enjoy the wine. Francis, thanks for the nice thing. And yeah, let's finish on the saying, let's make 2019 a year where 1 + 1 = 11. Make sure you get involved in the Wealth University. Up until Christmas, if you invest on the Cedars campaign in the different levels, blue, silver, and gold, you basically get the Wealth University products included, so that we can really hit the ground running and ensure that 2019 is a magnificent year for you. If I don't speak to you, have an incredible festive season. Enjoy the time with your family. I am considering doing a webinar next week on all the Wealth University products and going into them in a lot more detail. If you think that would be valuable, please just write in there Wealth University quickly, and then I'll consider doing it next Tuesday or Wednesday before everyone goes on leave. If not, this will be the last webinar for the year, and we'll get started again next year. Okay, so a couple of people are asking for the Wealth University. Okay, well, watch your emails. I'll see if it's possible in terms of timing. Again, thanks very much for your time in terms of where we're going. Have a good evening, good night, and whatever you do, let's work together to create global wealth for all involved. As always, Scott, I welcome you on our purposeful and profitable journey. Good night. Cheers.